Economic exchanges generate value, but before that value becomes taxable, it must survive the rigid architecture of the law. Determining tax liability requires navigating a series of highly engineered statutory logic gates to map how a financial event aligns with the code. This blueprint schematic maps the legal engine. The master switch for this system is Section 4 of the Income Tax Act 2025, the formal charge of tax. This switch activates when the system confirms two inputs, a quantifiable total income and a 12-month tax year timeline. This 2x2 matrix represents the territorial net deployed by Section 5. Once the timeline is set, this section determines the geographical reach of the tax by plotting a person's residential status against the origin of the income. For a person classified as a resident, the net expands. It captures global income, including wealth received or accrued anywhere in the world. For a non-resident, the matrix imposes a hard stop. The scope of total income contracts, limiting capture to wealth received or accruing within domestic borders. The Section 4 master switch and the Section 5 territorial matrix remain inert until an economic event passes through the foundational definitions of Section 2. We drop our first abstract economic event into the funnel. It immediately hits the first logic gate, the definition of income under Section 2, Clause 49. The source text uses an inclusive definition. Stating income includes creates a mechanism capturing standard profits while allowing specific additions. It captures financial metrics like business profits and dividends, and inward flows like voluntary contributions to nonprofits. Subclause W further extends this definition to government assistance. Subsidies, cash incentives, and duty drawbacks are all explicitly classified as taxable income. Income functions as an artificial boundary, capturing nearly all inward flows of economic advantage unless explicitly excluded by the statute. If the event clears the income gate, the system routes the underlying property to Gate 2 to determine if it qualifies as a capital asset. Clause 22 defaults to broad inclusion, identifying property of any kind. Specific bypasses then remove business stock in trade and personal effects. Furthermore, the exclusion of agricultural land entirely depends on its geographic location. Agricultural land remains excluded only if it exists outside specific zones, measured aerially from the limits of a municipality. The parameters scale with urban density. If the local municipality has a population over 10,000, the statute imposes a 2-kilometer exclusion zone. For municipalities with a population exceeding 1 million, the capital asset zone extends to 8 kilometers from the local limits. Under ITA 2025, an asset's vulnerability to taxation is dictated by its spatial relationship to urban boundaries and population figures. Possessing a capital asset does not trigger a tax charge on its own. The system requires a specific trigger event to actuate the charge. That trigger is Gate 3, transfer. Section 2, Clause 10 extends beyond a simple sale. It includes the exchange, relinquishment, or legal extinguishment of rights. It also captures involuntary events like compulsory acquisition and chronological milestones like bond maturity. Transfer acts as a net designed to capture the structural realization of economic value, whether that realization is voluntary, involuntary, or dictated by time. Once a transfer occurs, the system calculates the time elapsed between acquisition and transfer to classify the gain. The statutory baseline for a short-term capital asset is a holding period of not more than 24 months. For specific categories of assets, the statute provides an exception that reduces this threshold to 12 months. This accelerated timeline applies to securities listed on recognized stock exchanges, units of the Unit Trust of India, and units of equity-oriented funds. The text explicitly substitutes the words 24 months with 12 months for these specific financial assets. By substituting 12 months for the 24-month baseline, the statute accelerates the transition from short-term to long-term classification for highly liquid financial capital. We can trace these definitions by running a specific test case through the engine, a virtual digital asset. Section 2, Clause 111 identifies this as a cryptographically secured token that provides a digital representation of value. As the token node enters the engine, it clears the first gate, falling within the inclusive definition of income. It then clears the capital asset gate. Because it does not qualify for the personal effects exclusion, the system classifies it as taxable property. When the owner exchanges the token, the extinguishment of their rights over that asset satisfies the definition of a transfer. The system calculates the holding period against the temporal rules to determine whether the gain is classified as short-term or long-term. Finally, the note is captured by the Section 5 jurisdictional grid because the assessee is a resident of India. This is the exact moment an abstract economic event transforms into a defined legal tax liability within the framework of the Act. The Income Tax Act 2025 operates through this sequential architecture, where each definition serves as a specific filter to delineate the boundaries of tax liability.